While the Order of the Phoenix came out on top in the First Wizarding War, the amount of tragedy that took place for most of the members in the society might make you say that they lost more than they won. Founded in the 1970s, they faced the Death Eaters 20-1. The odds were clearly not in their favor, and it showed. Welcome to Movie Flame. I'm Morgan Ross, and today we are going over what happened to all 25 members of the original Order of the Phoenix. If you enjoy this video, please consider liking and sharing. It will greatly help to grow and sustain the channel. And if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, and you can also follow me on all of my other social media pages, all of which are linked down below, and all of which house similar content that I make here on this channel. Now, let's get into it. Albus Dumbledore. Albus was the founding member of the society, starting it to combat Voldemort and his rising army of Death Eaters. He sent the members out on missions, knowing that each time he did, it put all of them in grave danger. However, he knew that it had to be done. Toward the end of the war, he interviewed a potential professor for Hogwarts named Sybil Trelawney in the Hog's Head in the village of Hogsmeade. During this interview, Sybil began foretelling a prophecy that would change everything. It was about a boy born at the end of July, whose parents had defied Voldemort 3 times, and who had the power to vanquish the Dark Lord. Unknown to Dumbledore at first, a Death Eater named Severus Snape was listening at the door, and he told Voldemort the part of the prophecy that he had heard. Dumbledore knew that this put 2 families at risk, the Potters and the Longbottoms, both of whom happened to be members of the Order of the Phoenix. He put protections in place for both of them, but these protections were compromised. Dumbledore was incredibly saddened when the Potters were killed. But miraculously, their son Harry inadvertently ended the war as he took down Lord Voldemort when Voldemort tried to kill him. Dumbledore took it upon himself to take the boy to his only living relatives, the Muggle family, the Dursleys. Dumbledore had a specific reason for doing this though. He alone knew that Lily, Harry's mom's sacrifice, would grant a protection upon him, which would live on as long as Harry lived with his mother's sister, Aunt Petunia. Even after Voldemort's fall, Dumbledore knew it was not fully over because they had to round up the remaining Death Eaters, and during this, there were some more casualties to members of the Order. Dumbledore was left to return to his duties as headmaster, having many of his society members' deaths and fates on his conscience. Dumbledore went on to restart the Order when Voldemort returned, and this time, he had recruited Snape as a double agent. He eventually ordered Snape to kill him to solidify Snape's cover. Meanwhile, he sent Harry to find and destroy Voldemort's Horcruxes, and both of these actions led to Voldemort's ultimate destruction. Before we keep going, I've got some amazing news for you guys. Right now, Temu app users can get gifts for $0. Yes, you heard me right, completely free products. Here's the deal. These $0 gifts are Temu's most popular items, which you don't want to miss. Just place a qualifying order in the app and the gift is yours. It's honestly the perfect way to start your Temu shopping experience, and you can score something amazing without spending a dime. Now follow along with me. Download the Temu app, open it, and type my code CAP9482 into the search bar and not at checkout. Again, my code only works when you type it into the search bar, not at checkout. And don't forget this code because it's your key to unlocking your $0 gift. I was able to get a bunch of cool equipment that I'm currently using for this video right now, including the lights that are shining on me, an extension for my camera stand, and an extension for plugins that are currently hooked up to this microphone. So go try it now and see for yourself. But hang on, I have even more for you guys. Temu actually gave my followers another exclusive code, which is KEF8747. If you type this code into the search bar, you can unlock a $100 coupon bundle. So that means you can try the $0 gift items and get the $100 coupon to bundle it. Download the app through the link in my bio and try it for yourself. Now, back to the show. Alastor Mad-Eye Moody. Moody was perhaps the fiercest member of the Order based on what he did. He was an Auror for the Ministry of Magic at the time, and he hunted down Death Eaters like nobody else. He captured dozens of them, ensuring they were locked up in Azkaban. By the end of the war, half the cells in the prison were filled because of him. and this included Igor Karkaroff, who was known to be part of one of the most famous and impressive huntings any Auror had ever achieved. Then, when the Ministry gave the Aurors permission to use the unforgivable curses on Death Eaters, Moody hunted down a prominent Death Eater named Evan Rosier, and he murdered him during their duel. The duel left scars on Moody though, as he lost a chunk of his nose during the fight. Moody killed a number of other Death Eaters as well, possibly including the Death Eater Wilkes. However, Moody was one of the few Aurors who tried not to use the unforgivable curses if it wasn't necessary. Fighting in the First Wizarding War took a huge toll on Moody both physically and mentally. I mentioned he lost a chunk of his nose, and that was not the only time something like that happened. His face took so much damage that it was described to look like it was a roughly carved piece of wood. After Voldemort's fall, Moody continued to hunt the remaining Death Eaters that were still out there, and it was during one of these fights that he famously lost one of his eyes, and it had to be replaced with a prosthetic eye. However, the worst thing that came from his time fighting for the Order and the Ministry was his mental state afterwards. He became extremely paranoid and suffered from PTSD. He knew he had made loads of enemies while locking up and killing Death Eaters, and he feared that their family and friends were coming for him for revenge. He began seeing dark wizards that weren't really there. He once attacked a woman who came up behind him. He destroyed a birthday present thinking it was a disguised basilisk egg. On several occasions, he thought somebody shaking his hand was attempted murder, and he very carefully prepared all of his food and drinks, scared that somebody would poison him. The Ministry realized that he was no longer fit to be an Auror, and they forced him to retire. He became a joke in the wizarding world following his retirement, earning the nickname Mad-Eye Moody. When Voldemort returned though, Moody joined the Order for its second coming, and he died nobly in the Battle of Seven Potters, killed by Voldemort himself. Benjy Fenwick. Benjy went on quite a few dangerous missions while fighting for the Order, including one mission where he acted alone, most likely on a stealth mission. He was eventually found by Death Eaters though, and they gave him a truly horrific death. He was not just hit by the killing curse, where your body just simply falls to the ground. He was hit by a spell that blasted him to smithereens. After he didn't return, the Order went looking for him, and they were only able to find bits of his exploded body. Caradoc Dearborn. Caradoc joined the Order during the height of the war, and he, like Benjy Fenwick, went on a mission by himself. When he left, that was the last time anybody ever heard from him. His fate might be one of the most unsettling because he simply just went missing. He disappeared with nobody knowing where, or even more, what happened to him. The Second Coming of the Order honored him in a small but memorable way, as his name was one of the passwords required to listen to Potterwatch, which was the rebellion's radio station that gave hope to those still fighting and filled them in on all of the news going on. Aberforth Dumbledore. Aberforth joined the Order to help his older brother Albus Dumbledore, who, as said, was the founder of the society. Aberforth ran the Hog's Head Inn, and he had some dodgy people come into his bar. This made him crucial to gather intel for the Order. Toward the end of the war, Aberforth was the one who caught the Death Eater Severus Snape listening at the door during Albus and Sybil Trelawney's interview where she foretold the prophecy. And this inadvertently helped end the war. Because Aberforth had caught him and Snape had only heard half of the prophecy, this meant that Voldemort only knew half as well. With this missing information, it ultimately led to his downfall when he tried to kill Harry Potter. After the war, Aberforth went back to running his bar, staying quiet for the most part. He was pretty defeated after the war, and he had little hope when the war restarted. He didn't join the Order this time around, but he occasionally passed on things he heard from his customers that sounded suspicious. After his brother died though, he gave up entirely and was ready to let Voldemort take over. Fortunately, he came to his senses and fought in the Battle of Hogwarts. Sirius Black. Sirius was fresh out of Hogwarts when he joined the Order, and he went on more missions than most in the society, often risking his life in reckless ways, but in ways that helped the Order get ahead. When it became clear that there was a mole among them, Sirius was suspicious of even those closest to him, including his longtime friend Remus Lupin. When they became aware of the prophecy and Lily and James had to go into hiding, Sirius was their first choice for Secret Keeper, knowing that he would die to protect them. However, Sirius said it was too obvious, and he suggested they use their other friend and Order member, Peter Pettigrew. This turned out to be a terrible decision, and one that would haunt Sirius for the rest of his life, because Peter turned out to be the mole. Being Secret Keeper, Peter told Voldemort exactly where the Potters were, which led to Lily and James's death, but also led to the war coming to an end because of their son Harry. On the night that they died, Sirius, being the only one who knew that Peter was the Secret Keeper, everyone else still thinking it was him, hunted Peter down. However, Peter framed him and made it look like Sirius had killed him and 12 muggles, as Pettigrew escaped in his rat form. Sirius was left laughing hysterically at the scene of the crime, unhinged by the death of his friends, and hysterically stunned to find out that he had underestimated Pettigrew. Sirius was shipped off to Azkaban with no trial and sentenced to life in prison. After the war, he spent 12 long years in Azkaban, guarded by the Dementors, the foulest creatures on Earth, and he became a ghost of his once handsome self. He eventually broke out of prison and got to have a relationship with his godson Harry. He also joined the Second Coming of the Order and died while fighting in the Second Wizarding War. Remus Lupin. Remus joined the Order right out of Hogwarts just like Sirius, and he was useful mainly because he was a werewolf. He was able to gather intel on many different missions when being among a pocket of Voldemort's followers in the werewolf community. Because he was gone so much, and because his time was spent with other werewolves who wanted to revolt against wizards, there were a few people in the Order, including Sirius, who thought he was compromised. Meanwhile, Lupin suspected Sirius of being the mole, which drove a wedge in their longtime friendship. At the end of the war, Lupin lost his 4 best friends in one night. Lily and James were dead, he thought Peter was dead, and he thought that his friend Sirius was responsible for all 3 of their deaths and was shipped off to Azkaban. While others celebrated the downfall of Voldemort and the end of the war, this marked the beginning of a long stretch of loneliness and unhappiness for Remus. With the Order of the Phoenix disbanded, his previous comrades who were lucky enough to survive returned to busy lives with their families. For Remus though, he had recently found out about his mother's passing, and while his father was always delighted to see him, Remus refused to endanger his father's peaceful existence by returning to live with him. It was nearly impossible for Lupin to get a job, meaning he had very little money, and on top of that, his werewolf transformations began to take a toll on his body. He was a pariah amongst the wizarding world and looked down upon and mistreated for what he was. It wasn't until years later when he found out the truth about Sirius, met James's son, and was welcomed back by Dumbledore that he was able to find purpose in his life again. He joined the Second Coming of the Order, married Nymphadora Tonks, and had a son with her named Teddy. Both he and his wife lost their lives during the Battle of Hogwarts though, but he knew that they had died to save the world, and knew that his son would one day understand. Marlene McKinnon. Marlene had a loving family when she joined the Order, but she obviously felt the cause was worth the risk. She was known to have gone on a lot of the main missions that the Order conducted, and unfortunately, she paid the price for this. She was killed by Death Eaters, but even more tragically, her loving family was killed alongside her. The Death Eaters wiped out all that was left of the McKinnon family. Arabella Figg. Mrs. Figg was a squib, meaning she was born from magical parents but had no magical ability herself. Dumbledore clearly knew her parents somehow, and during the First Wizarding War, he saw value in her. She became far more valuable at the end of the war though, as Dumbledore gave her the very important task of moving to Little Whinging to watch over Harry at his aunt and uncle's house. She moved down the street on Privet Drive, and she did exactly what Dumbledore asked, watched over Harry but from afar. She was able to get close enough to the Dursleys that they trusted her to watch Harry when they went somewhere where they didn't want to bring him. She made sure that Harry did not enjoy his time with her though, and took care never to reveal her heritage to either Harry or the Dursleys. She found her poor treatment of Harry difficult, but she felt it was necessary to ensure the Dursleys would keep sending Harry to a place where he did not particularly enjoy himself. Dumbledore doubled down on her role when Voldemort returned, and after Harry had to fight off Dementors in Little Whinging, she testified to help clear Harry's name. Dedalus Diggle. Dedalus wasn't a particularly powerful member of the Order, but he did what he could. The day the war ended and Voldemort fell, Dedalus shot a downpour of shooting stars to celebrate, which caught the attention of Muggles, and which other Order members, specifically Minerva McGonagall, felt was foolish. Dedalus was given an important job after the war, which was to watch over Harry, though from a much farther distance than Mrs. Figg. He was not as good at keeping his cover though, because he bowed to Harry when he saw him one day. This made Mrs. Dursley keep her distance from him, which wasn't great considering his job was to stay close to Harry and watch over him. Nevertheless, he was still recruited for the second coming of the Order of the Phoenix. He was part of the advance guard who rescued Harry from the Dursleys, and later he took the Dursleys into hiding when things got really bad at the end of the Second Wizarding War. Elphias Doge. Elphias was Dumbledore's oldest and best friend during his time as a Hogwarts student, so it makes sense that Dumbledore would want to recruit him for the Order. Elphias traveled the world after his Hogwarts days, which Albus was supposed to do with him but couldn't following his mother's death. But during those years, Elphias learned a lot and became an even more powerful wizard than he already was, which made him a great addition to the Order. Following the war, Elphias became an asset to the Ministry, being a special advisor to the Wizengamot, the High Court and Law Parliament in the Wizarding government, and we can assume that he helped with the trials with the remaining Death Eaters that were captured following Voldemort's fall. He joined the Order of the Phoenix in its second coming as well, being a part of the advance guard who took Harry from the Dursleys, and when the Society's leader and founder died, Elphias wrote Dumbledore's obituary for his oldest and best friend. Emmeline Vance. Emmeline was one of those who made it out of the First Wizarding War unscathed. However, she could not say the same for the Second Wizarding War. She rejoined the Order in its second coming, and she was murdered near the residence of the Muggle Prime Minister, who she was presumably watching over. This was a devastating loss to the Order, but one that was actually really messed up. During Snape's conversation with Bellatrix and Narcissa, we find out that Snape was the one who told Voldemort where she was while on duty for the Order. This led to Voldemort sending his Death Eaters to her location where she was captured and killed. Considering that Snape was a double agent taking orders from Dumbledore, it seems as though both Snape and Albus sacrificed her for the greater good without anybody knowing. Dumbledore had clearly instructed Severus to do this so that Voldemort would trust him, knowing what the result would be. However, nobody else in the Order ever knew this. Mundungus Fletcher. Mundungus was a wild card in most of the Society's eyes. Most of the members disliked him, and even more didn't trust him. He certainly had a sketchy reputation, but Mundungus was incredibly loyal to Dumbledore after Dumbledore got him out of some trouble. And Dumbledore saw that he would be a valuable asset due to his many connections in the criminal underworld. And he was right, because Mundungus gained a lot of crucial information for the Order. After the war was over, he went back to his life as, some would say, a criminal. Despite going back to a life of crime, Dumbledore still trusted him enough to bring him back into the Order for the Second Wizarding War, and there he played a very similar role that he did in the first. Later in the war, when Dumbledore was gone, he unwillingly fought in the Battle of Seven Potters, and when he saw Voldemort, he disapparated, leading to Moody's death. Mundungus kind of disappeared after that, and he did not join the Order for the Battle of Hogwarts, most likely too ashamed to face them, and he went back to a life of crime, and that was the last we heard of him. Rubeus Hagrid. Like Mundungus, Hagrid was incredibly loyal to Dumbledore. This made it obvious though that Hagrid would join the Order, and he was a force to be reckoned with. He could still perform a bit of magic using his pink umbrella, which housed half of his snapped wand. But even more, just physically, he was a straight up unstoppable force in any battle he took part in. His thick giant skin made spells bounce off of him, and he had 10 times the strength of a normal human. We don't know anything about the specific battles he took part in, but I'm sure that every single one that he did take part in, somebody on the opposing side got hurt. After Voldemort's fall, Hagrid had one of the most important jobs, which was going to the Potters following the attack and taking Harry to Dumbledore at the Dursleys. Hagrid went back to his duties at Hogwarts as the groundskeeper, and when the time came, he helped Harry join the Wizarding World. When the Order reformed, Hagrid went on a mission to recruit giants to their cause, but unfortunately he was too late. The Death Eaters had gotten to them first. Nevertheless, Hagrid continued to fight for the Order and fought in the Battle of Hogwarts to help end Voldemort once and for all. Edgar Bones. Edgar Bones was an insanely powerful wizard, being described as a great wizard by Moody and one of the greatest wizards of all time by Hagrid. Edgar had a happy family, marrying a nice woman and having multiple children with her. His allegiance to the Order made him pay dearly, however. Death Eaters attacked him in his home, where he was forced to watch them kill his wife and children, as well as his own parents, before they took his life as well. Sturgis Podmore. Sturgis was one of the most trusted members of the Society in the First Wizarding War, but it's what happened to him during the Second Wizarding War that is noteworthy. While Sturgis was on duty for the Order guarding the Prophecy and the Ministry of Magic, Lucius Malfoy put him under the Imperius Curse. He then used the Imperius Curse to make Podmore break into the Department of Mysteries to steal the Prophecy. Podmore failed and was found at the scene of the crime, and he was arrested for this. He was loyal to the Order and Dumbledore though, and nobly refused to speak, even in his own defense. So he was sentenced to 6 months in Azkaban, a harsh decision by Fudge, who was avidly trying to hurt Dumbledore and anyone close to him. Sturgis was released 6 months later the following March though, and he didn't miss a step, rejoining the Order and fighting for them. Dorcas Meadowes. Based on the context that we have, Dorcas was one of the most powerful members of the Order and one of the bigger threats to the opposition. We know this because Voldemort didn't send his Death Eaters after her. He took it into his own hands and hunted her down himself. When he found her, I'm sure that she put up a good fight before Voldemort took her down and killed her personally. James Potter. James joined the Order right out of Hogwarts, just like Remus and Sirius. James went on many missions, one of which involved himself and Sirius going after Death Eaters on Sirius's motorbike and then having to evade Muggle police. James also went on some of the most dangerous missions, which directly defied Voldemort himself. In fact, he did this 3 times, which is why the prophecy could be about his son, born to those who have thrice defied him. With the prophecy, as we discussed, James tried to make Sirius the Secret Keeper, but on Sirius's recommendation, they made Peter the Secret Keeper instead, which resulted in him ratting them out. When Voldemort burst into their home, James was wandless. Despite this though, he yelled up to his wife to take Harry and go, and he heroically tried to hold the Dark Lord off, and he of course lost his life doing so. Lily Potter. Lily, like James, joined the Order right out of school, and shortly after joining, she married and had a son with James. Lily also went on some of the most dangerous missions, defying Voldemort himself 3 times, possibly on the same missions as James. After being betrayed, their home in Godric's Hollow was attacked by the Dark Lord. When James called up to her, she tried to barricade the door, and when Voldemort burst through, she threw herself between him and her infant son Harry, dying to protect him. This sacrifice enacted a magical protection through the power of love, which made Voldemort's killing curse rebound and hit him. Lily's sacrifice ultimately resulted in the First Wizarding War coming to a close, as her son became the boy who lived. Peter Pettigrew. We've covered a lot of his story already in this video. Peter joined the Order with his Hogwarts friends, became the mole in the Order, and when he became Secret Keeper, he told Voldemort exactly where the Potters were. When Sirius went after him, Peter did a great job manipulating the situation, speaking as though Sirius was the one who betrayed Lily and James, not him. He then caused a massive explosion that killed 12 Muggles, he cut off his finger, and he escaped in his rat form, leaving Sirius at the scene of the crime. Following his escape, Pettigrew weaseled his way into becoming the pet rat for the Weasley family, and being in the company of an all-wizarding family ensured that he was aware of every bit of news that was going on in the wizarding world. He took on the name Scabbers, and he led a leisurely life as first Percy's pet and then Ron's pet. He was terrified though when Sirius escaped Azkaban. When he was discovered by his old friends, he managed to escape, and he then went out to find Voldemort. Peter was the main reason why Voldemort was able to return, but when he almost betrayed Voldemort by helping Harry Potter, the magical hand that Voldemort had given him choked him to death. Gideon Prewett. Gideon was one of the 2 brothers of Molly Prewett, who would later go on to take the name of Molly Weasley. Though Molly joined the Order in its second coming, she did not join the original Order, only her brothers did so. Gideon went on many missions for the Society, including one that led to him and his brother fighting 5 Death Eaters at once, one of whom included Antonin Dolohov, one of the most ruthless Death Eaters. They did their best in the fight, but they were eventually outmatched and ended up losing their lives. Alastor Moody later said this about them: "It took 5 Death Eaters to kill him and his brother Fabian. they fought like heroes. Fabian Prewett. As we just went over, Fabian died alongside his brother Gideon, dying a heroic death in the name of the Order of the Phoenix and dying for a greater cause that he knew was well worth it. Years after his death, his sister Molly gifted his watch to Harry Potter, which was tradition when a wizard turned 17. I'm sure that Fabian would have been happy to know that his watch was passed on to the boy that ended the war he died fighting for. Frank Longbottom. Frank was one of the members of the Order of the Phoenix that was also an Auror for the Ministry of Magic, and he was a very respected Auror at that. He went on many dangerous missions that, like Lily and James, defied Voldemort himself 3 times. This meant that his son Neville Longbottom was a candidate for the prophecy that Sybil Trelawney had foretold. He and his family survived the war because Voldemort chose to go after Harry instead of Neville. However, the tragedy of Frank and Alice took place after Voldemort's downfall. They were attacked by 4 Death Eaters, Bellatrix, Rodolphus, and Sebastian Lestrange, alongside Barty Crouch Jr. They tried to fight them off, but were eventually overpowered. They were not killed though. They suffered a fate far worse. They were hit over and over again with the Cruciatus Curse, as the Death Eaters tried to get information out of them about their fallen master. The torture was so severe that their minds were completely destroyed, going into an irreversible vegetative state. Frank spent the rest of his life in St. Mungo's Hospital in the Memory Ward, having no memory of his former self. Their attackers were sentenced to life in Azkaban for this, but this did not change the fate that he and his wife suffered. Alice Longbottom. Alice was a respected Auror alongside her husband, as well as a loving mother to Neville. She also took place in at least 3 missions that defied Voldemort himself, and when she lost her mind, she too had no memory of her former life, including her beloved son. Neville went on to be raised by Alice's mother-in-law, and though she was heartbroken, she was more than proud of the way Alice and her son had gone out fighting for a greater cause. While living in the Memory Ward, Neville and his gran frequently visited, and Alice got into the habit of giving Neville empty candy wrappers. It's unlikely that she knew what she was doing, nor who she was giving the wrappers to, but her son plastered his wall at home with each one she put in his hand. Minerva McGonagall. McGonagall was one of Dumbledore's oldest friends, so naturally she joined the Order. She, however, spent less time in the field and more time filling in at Hogwarts while Dumbledore was absent. She didn't become headmistress or anything, but she picked up some of the slack while Albus was out conducting missions and leading the fight against Voldemort. Minerva received terrible news during the First Wizarding War, which was the fact that her former love, Dougal McGregor, a muggle whom she almost married in her younger days, was killed in a random anti-muggle attack by Death Eaters. And even more tragically, his wife and children were among the victims as well. This really affected Minerva, as she wondered whether she could have saved him had things worked out differently with them. When the war came to a close and McGonagall found out that Harry Potter was to live with his muggle aunt and uncle, she did a little scouting. In her cat form, she spied on the Dursleys all day and came to the conclusion that they were awful people. When Dumbledore arrived that night, she told him this, but Albus told her that it was the only option. A decade later, this boy would go on to be one of her favorite students, who she respected possibly more than any other student she ever had. Minerva joined the Order in its second coming, fought in the Battle of Hogwarts, and there, she watched proudly as her favorite student ended the war and Voldemort once and for all. And that is what happened to all 25 members of the original Order of the Phoenix. It's clear that the First Wizarding War took a toll on the society and led to many tragedies. Everybody who died for a greater cause though, and in the end, their sacrifices were not in vain. If you like this video, I have a bunch of other Harry Potter videos on this channel, like this one. I don't know what it is, but it's a good one that I really like. And over here is the video that you would like most on my channel, which is a new feature from YouTube, so check that out as well. That's all I have for you guys today though. Thank you so much for watching.